Watches. To most around the world, there is only one brand that sits right at the top of the tree, the king of luxury, its own self-proclaiming emblem featuring a crown, and that is of course Rolex. But the reality is a whole new level above that watchmaking royalty exists. Somewhere way up in the clouds with godlike auras lives brands like F. Bijon, Patek Philippe, and perhaps the Jesus of hype, Richard Mille. Unlike most of their revered Swiss rivals, RM do not have a century-long history as a foundation for their elite status of recent years, and as the brand commanding the biggest premiums on the secondary market, they have cemented themselves as the ultimate tokens of wealth amongst the A-listers and mega rich. Well, that was then. Anyway, in today's stagnant economic context, even the strongest brands are experiencing a decline in great values. If that's the case for the steady and stable force that is the big crown, then it begs the question, why is no one talking about the big boys? What is the current state of the market for those brands, and what does the future hold for the grossly overhyped, overpriced and frankly niche watch designs of Richard Mille? Hi guys, welcome back, and if you're new here, I'm Vinny, a former accountant turned watch dealer. Now, why am I talking about Richard Mille? Well, first of all, not many other people seem to talk about them on this platform. They seem to exist in their own hemisphere. They're too respected to be discussed, so we're going to do just that. But also because a friend of mine actually owns a Richard Mille and approached me not too long back saying, Vinny, I need to sell this watch, I need to move it on, and I've approached many UK dealers and not a single one of them made me an offer. No one was actually interested in buying it. And he said, well, it begs the question for me, if no one's actually interested in buying it, then firstly, how much is it actually worth? And secondly, is it worth anything at all? With a Richard Mille, your only options of being able to sell that piece on is to the secondary market, is to get a trade price from a secondary market dealer, because first of all, selling it on eBay would be impossible. Facebook Marketplace, impossible. Selling it on Chrono24, you would lose 6.5% fees. Your only option is a secondary market dealer, and if no secondary market dealer is interested in buying it from you, then in economic terms, yes, it is worthless, because the economy works on supply versus demand, and if there is absolutely zero demand for a product, then technically, yes, it is worth what someone is prepared to pay for it. In reality, he will eventually sell that piece. But I just wondered, how on earth have we got to this stage with Richard Mille? The context of Richard Mille, obviously, we know that this was one of the most hyped watch brands of the last 5 to 10 years. Certainly, secondary market values, they used to trade at premiums well above, percentage-wise, what even the most sought-after Rolex pieces did. Now, if we pause and rewind to 18 months ago, the beginning of the market correction, of course, the first to take the hit of declining market values was Rolex. Now, this was quite alarming at the time, and we all thought, oh, we need to get rid of our Rolex watches and shift that money either into something else or just bank it because prices are falling. And that caused a lot of mass hysteria and alarm amongst collectors, investors and enthusiasts. Now, what was interesting at the time is it actually took a couple of months for Audemars Piguet values to also follow. And then eventually, we're talking 6 to 8 months later, so that's quite a big gap, after Rolex prices started to fall, Richard Mille values started to fall as well. So what actually happened was dealers on this platform, and I can think of one specific one based in London, were advising explicitly to consolidate your inventory, consolidate your collection of your 7 or 8 Rolexes, whatever it may be, and put all of that money into one Richard Mille, because they were saying our Richard Mille watches are still selling. They're still selling for 3 times the retail. They haven't fallen at all. They appear to be resistant to this market turbulence that's just begun. So of course, people made that move. They consolidated their collection down to one piece and put what I determine it to be as all of their eggs into one basket. What happened a couple of months later, those prices started to fall as well. So that was a real annoyance of mine to see that people were consolidating their collection, because I've always advised that you are better off with a watch collection or with any investments whatsoever to spread the risk. So do not put all of your eggs in one basket, spread them across several baskets. You know the situation of my friend now, he's going to have to get rid of that Richard Mille at a cut price to someone who is willing to make any offer because he needs the liquidity, he needs the cash flow now. If he'd have had 5 or 6 Rolexes, he could have very easily just sold 1 or 2 of them, and then he would be back in the green and able to actually fund his lifestyle. Let's take a look then at exactly the current state of the market for Richard Mille and some examples of how they have moved in value on the secondary market. Richard Mille RN10 Titanium. Many consider this to be the entry point in the Richard Mille brand for that tonneau case shape. It is just a date and time only piece. I believe the movement isn't even entirely in-house Richard Mille. It is a voucher, a highly modified voucher movement, and actually the retail price on this was $78,000. Pre the hype days, I would say around 2016, this was a watch that was actually trading on the secondary market for a mere $48,000. Now since then, of course, the peak of the market was 2022. This traded for $140,000. Present day, however, this is now a watch which trades, if I can sell it, at $120,000. So of course, if you bought at the peak of $140,000, you will have lost at least $20,000. If you're actually going to achieve a trade price for that, then you can assume that a dealer will try to make 10% on it. So $120,000 minus their take, let's say you would be getting around $105,000 to $110,000 at trade price. Your actual loss is around $35,000, which is absolutely enormous and actually paints a very different picture to the movement in values of Rolex. You know, at most a stainless steel Rolex might have lost $5,000, $6,000, £7,000. Many people can, you know, shrug that off and they can say, look, I'll keep wearing it, I'll enjoy it. With a Richard Mille though, $35,000, that's a hell of a lot of money. If enthusiasts and collectors are realizing such pain in their losses of their Richard Mille, will they go back? That's a question that I'm sure we need to ask and we'll discuss later on. The next one is the Richard Mille RM55 in white. Now this is probably right at the other end of the scale. One of the most extravagant and innovative Richard Milles. At retail, this was a £120,000 watch new. At the peak of the market in 2022, guys, this was a watch which was worth $340,000. Present day end user price is around $300,000. Getting a trade price for that watch would leave you with about $270,000. So it would have realized you a loss of around $70,000 if you bought this one at the peak as well. And of course, if you're lucky enough to find a dealer like my friend who's struggling to actually make you any offer on it at all. The Richard Mille RM11 in rose gold and titanium. What a beautiful piece, probably one of the most iconic there with the chronograph movement, a flyback chronograph and the big double date window. This has always been my favorite of the Richard Mille collection. Retail price on this is $160,000. Pre the hype days in 2016 on the secondary market, this was trading for a mere $63,000. And at peak market in 2022, this was a $250,000 piece. Present day end user price, however, has slipped all the way down to around $210,000. The trade price would be a lot lower than that, so take away the 10%, this would leave you with around about, I don't know, $190,000. So again, that is a considerable loss. 190 to 250k would have lost you around $60,000. So looking at just those 3 examples there then, guys, a $35,000 loss, a $70,000 loss and a $60,000 loss in the space of just 1 year. We're only talking about 2022 here. You know, 1 year to 18 months is around about the time frame. I cannot think of any other asset, or certainly any other investment, that would have lost you such a considerable chunk of money in just 1 year. Most people would say, and I know people would be writing in the comments, well, Vinny, you know, people who can afford £300,000 on a watch, you know, they can afford to lose the 70,000. And that's fair enough. I understand that point. And you know what? For many footballers, celebrities even, maybe even influencers for whom that money comes quite easy, yes, it does. But the majority of wealthy people, look, they've worked really hard for that money. They've worked for many years to build up their wealth, build up their businesses that have created a machine to generate that kind of income so that they can afford to go out and buy these pieces. Now, believe me, people with high net worth and at that very peak of the sort of wealth pyramid, they really do care about losing £10,000, £20,000. People who bought them for investment pieces will be looking at them now saying, well, that was a very bad bet. I'm not going to go anywhere near the Richard Mille brand anymore. And that's very damaging. It's very damaging for the sort of allure of that brand as an investment piece. So this brings me on to ponder, what does the future hold for brands like Richard Mille, similar brands, F. Pigeon and Patek Philippe as well. Now, specifically for Richard Mille, I would be quite concerned because this is a brand which has only been in operation since 2001. There is very little history to back up that crazy hype that existed mainly on the internet and in sort of celebrity circles, popular culture. Of course, we know Richard Mille are probably a master of marketing, even more so than Rolex. They're everywhere in all of the major sporting tournaments, golf, Formula One. They only produce up to 5,000 pieces a year, so demand is never really going to fall enough for them to not be able to sell their watches fresh out of the authorized dealer. But on the secondary market, we're already seeing prices slipping quite considerably. When you weigh that up against a Patek Philippe though, now they also exist at this sort of upper universe of the high-end luxury watch industry, you know, way above Rolex. The difference with them is they've got hundreds of years of history. Richard Mille, they haven't got the innovation, they haven't got the patents, they haven't got the history and the intrinsic value in the business that the likes of a Patek Philippe have. So going forward, Patek Philippe are fairly safe. Another one which is similar, we could compare Richard Mille to with that big sort of hype bubble and prices going at 2 or 3 times above the retail and the secondary market, is F. Pigeon. Another similar one could be MB&F. Now, these are similar in the sense that, yes, they suddenly exploded onto the scene. They also are fairly new to the watch industry, as new as Richard Mille. However, they differ in the fact that I don't think that they are quite sort of narrow-minded in terms of their designs. With F. Pigeon, it is more of a brand of if you know, you know, and therefore collectors really respect more than just the trendiness of it, more than just the internet sensation behind the brand. They respect the brand because of its genuine engineering, innovation and what they've actually done for the watch industry in a whole. So I think there's more kudos attached to the F. Pigeon brand. That risk for me of falling out of fashion as well is a major risk, I think, for the Richard Mille brand going forward now that there's been volatility. Back in the 90s, the late 90s, Franck Muller were very popular. That had a similar sort of tonneau case shape. As soon as the 2000s hit, that became ugly. Brands like Jacob & Co hit the scene and they were sort of at the peak. They were the most sought after. Then it evolved away from Jacob & Co into Hublot. We all know what happened with Hublot. We've seen these things happen before. There isn't really a history to back up the Richard Mille brand, and now there is history of values falling on the secondary market. Where will they end up 5 years from now? It's anybody's guess, but I don't think your money is particularly safe in a collection of Richard Mille, certainly not, but even in one of them. Anyway guys, that just about concludes this video. Let me know what you think. What does the future hold for Richard Mille? Are they at risk of becoming a nobody, becoming a Franck Muller in the next 5 to 10 years? I'll be interested to know your thoughts. Thanks very much for joining me. A very Merry Christmas, and I will see you next time. Take care.